What if one whale sang a song that no other creature could answer? Tonight, we follow the 52 hertz whale, the loneliest voice in the ocean. Here on the sleepy BrainDose, knowledge drifts gently, bringing calm and curiosity together. Settle into the rhythm of soft science and quiet wonder. Stay with us until the end. When you listen to this story, you will come to know one of the most unusual mysteries of the ocean, the tale of a whale whose voice is unlike any other. Scientists have called it the 52 hertz whale because it sings at a frequency far from the songs of its relatives. You will discover how this sound was first detected, what makes it different, and why it has drawn so much attention from researchers, writers, and listeners around the world. The journey will move slowly, step by step, through the layers of knowledge that surround this animal. You will hear about the way sound travels through seawater, how whales normally communicate, and why a signal at 52 hertz stands out so strongly. You will learn about the tools used to detect it, from military hydrophones to long-term listening stations placed deep in the ocean. And you will follow the many ideas that scientists have offered to explain who this animal might be. A hybrid, a unique individual, or perhaps a sign of something we do not yet fully understand. All of this will be presented without drama, in a steady rhythm, so that the facts themselves can rest clearly in your mind. By the end, you may notice how the story of a single whale opens a wider picture of the ocean as a world of sound, fragile and rich, shaped both by nature and by human presence. This gentle beginning leads into the next theme, where we will look more closely at how sound itself moves through the sea. When we turn to the ocean, it is natural to imagine a place of silence. Waves roll on the surface, and from the shore we mostly hear the rhythmic breaking of water on sand or rock. Yet once we step beneath that surface, the picture changes. The ocean is not silent at all. It is, in fact, one of the most dynamic acoustic environments on Earth. Every layer of water carries vibrations, signals, and pulses that travel across great distances. To understand the mystery of the 52 hertz whale, it is helpful to know how sound behaves in this vast underwater world. Sound is a mechanical wave, and in air, it travels by moving molecules of nitrogen and oxygen. In water, the medium is denser. Molecules are closer together, and this density allows sound to travel more efficiently. In air, sound moves at about 343 meters per second. In seawater, depending on temperature, salinity, and pressure, the speed is more than 4 times faster, around 1,500 meters per second. This difference makes water an extraordinary conductor of acoustic information. Light is quickly absorbed in the ocean. Colors fade with depth, and visibility is often limited. Sound, by contrast, can spread with remarkable reach. For many marine animals, hearing is more important than sight. The physics of sound underwater depends on several key variables. Temperature plays a central role. Warmer water allows molecules to move more freely, increasing the speed of sound. Colder water slows it down. Pressure, which increases with depth, also raises the speed. Salinity, the concentration of dissolved salts, has a more modest but still relevant effect. These 3 factors combine to create layers, and sometimes channels, where sound can travel farther than expected. One such feature is called the SOFAR channel, an acronym for sound fixing and ranging. This layer, usually located at depths of 600 to 1,200 meters, can guide low-frequency sound waves across entire ocean basins. The discovery of the SOFAR channel during the 20th century reshaped our understanding of underwater communication. A whale song at the right frequency can enter this layer and travel hundreds or even thousands of kilometers without losing much of its energy. For the animals that inhabit the ocean, this means that sound is not only a local signal, but also a bridge across vast distances. Whales, in particular, have evolved to use this property of water to maintain contact during migrations and to find one another across open seas. The frequencies used by marine life cover a wide spectrum. Shrimp and other small invertebrates generate clicks and snaps at high frequencies, often above the range of human hearing. Dolphins use rapid bursts of sound for echolocation, bouncing signals off objects to create a sonic image of their environment. Large whales, such as blue whales and fin whales, rely on deep, resonant calls that fall between 10 and 40 hertz. These low frequencies are not only powerful, but also well suited to long-distance travel. They slip into the SOFR channel and can spread across oceans, forming an acoustic network that links individuals separated by thousands of kilometers. In addition to biological sources, the ocean is filled with geophysical sounds. Earthquakes generate vibrations that can be recorded by hydrophones around the globe. Underwater volcanoes produce rumblings, and the shifting of icebergs releases sharp cracks and groans. Rainfall, wind, and waves all leave their marks in the acoustic environment. What seems like a quiet expanse is actually filled with layers of sound, overlapping and interacting in ways that researchers continue to study. Humans, too, have become major contributors to this soundscape. Ships produce low-frequency noise through their engines and propellers. Military activities introduce sonar pulses that can reach extraordinary intensities. Industrial operations, such as drilling or construction, add further sources. This human-made noise can mask natural signals, making it harder for animals to detect one another. For whales, whose survival often depends on the ability to communicate across great distances, such interference can alter behaviors and migration routes. When scientists first heard the 52 hertz signal, they recognized immediately that it stood out from the known repertoire of whale calls. It was not only higher than the range of blue or fin whales, but also unusually consistent. To appreciate why it seemed so distinct, one must understand how stable whale songs normally are. Each species tends to use a characteristic frequency range, refined by evolution to match the physical properties of seawater. A sudden voice outside this range suggests something unusual, perhaps an individual with a different anatomy or physiology. The context of underwater acoustics made this single whale seem even more mysterious. Hydrophones, the instruments used to capture these sounds, were originally developed for military purposes during the Cold War. Arrays of sensors stretched across the oceans, designed to detect submarines. When these networks began recording marine life, researchers realized that the ocean was full of signals they had never cataloged. The 52 hertz whale emerged from this background as a clear, repeating voice. Without an understanding of how sound spreads in water, it might have been dismissed as noise. Instead, it was recognized as something remarkable. The acoustic richness of the ocean means that each frequency has its own role and reach. High-pitched clicks may travel only short distances, but provide fine detail for echolocation. Deep tones resonate far, creating a slow rhythm of connection between distant animals. The 52 hertz call falls between these extremes, too high to match the giants, too low to belong to smaller species. It occupies a space of its own, echoing across the water without a clear companion. It is worth noting that underwater sound is not simply about distance. Direction also matters. Sound waves bend with changes in temperature and pressure, a process called refraction. They can be trapped in layers or scattered by turbulence. For whales, this means that communication is shaped by geography as much as by biology. A call may carry across a basin in one direction, but be blocked in another. The environment itself becomes part of the conversation. Scientists studying underwater acoustics often describe the ocean as an archive of sound. Instruments left in place for years record not only the voices of animals, but also the slow rhythms of the earth, storms, ice, seismic activity. Listening to these records provides a window into processes both natural and human-made. Against this backdrop, the steady, repeating pattern of the 52 hertz wail became a signature unlike any other. If one wishes to imagine this environment, it may help to think of the ocean not as silent emptiness, but as a vast concert hall. Each participant, animal, storm, or machine, adds a note to the ongoing performance. Some sounds are fleeting, others endure for hours or days. The whale songs, deep and measured, form the baseline of this great composition. And amid them, one voice, fixed at 52 hertz, calls out again and again. This understanding of the acoustic world of the oceans allows us to place the mystery of the 52 hertz wail into context. To know why it is unusual, we must first grasp what is normal, the expected frequencies, the travel of sound, the layers of water that guide it. With this foundation, the story becomes clearer. The next step is to explore why whales sing at all, what purposes their songs serve, and how these purposes connect to their survival in the changing seas. To understand why the 52 hertz wail is such an enigma, it helps to look first at why whales sing at all. Sound is not an ornament in the lives of these animals. It is central to their survival. In the dark and shifting environment of the ocean, where visibility is often only a few meters, sound serves as the most reliable means of connection. For whales, it is the language through which they find one another, coordinate their movements, and sustain the rhythms of life. Whale songs vary greatly across species. Baleen whales, such as humpbacks, blues, and fins, produce long, low-frequency calls that can travel immense distances. Toothed whales, including dolphins and sperm whales, use high-frequency clicks and whistles suited for short-range communication and echolocation. The difference reflects evolutionary paths shaped by habitat, anatomy, and social needs. In each case, sound fills the role that vision often plays for land animals. It conveys presence, intention, and identity. Communication is perhaps the most familiar purpose of whale singing. Humpback whales, for instance, are known for their complex, evolving songs that can last for hours. These vocalizations are often associated with mating. Males repeat sequences of themes and phrases, creating patterns that other males in the population adopt and modify. The result is something akin to cultural transmission. Songs spread across groups, shift over time, and even replace one another. To biologists, this offers rare evidence of culture in non-human species. To the whales, it is a way of signaling fitness and attracting potential mates. But communication is not only about reproduction. Whales also use sound to maintain group cohesion. Many species travel in pods, and contact calls keep individuals aware of one another's positions. Mothers and calves in particular rely on distinctive sounds to stay together. In the open ocean, where currents and distances can easily separate them, such acoustic bonds are vital. These calls are usually higher in frequency and shorter in duration than mating songs. Adapted for clarity in noisy environments. Navigation is another crucial role of sound. The ocean is vast, and whales migrate across thousands of kilometers each year. By emitting and listening to low-frequency calls, they can gauge distances and orient themselves within the seascape. Some researchers suggest that whales may use sound to detect underwater features, such as seamounts or continental shelves. in ways that resemble echolocation, but on a larger, slower scale. This capacity would make the ocean not an empty space, but a textured map, traced by sound rather than sight. There is also evidence that whale songs serve functions beyond immediate communication or navigation. Some calls appear to reinforce social bonds or reduce conflict within groups. Others may play a role in synchronizing behavior, such as coordinated diving or feeding. In species that hunt cooperatively, acoustic signals can organize movement so that prey is surrounded or herded into tighter formations. In this way, song becomes part of the shared intelligence of the pod. Anatomy helps explain how whales produce such sounds. Baleen whales generate calls through structures in their larynx, though the exact mechanisms are still studied. Unlike humans, they lack vocal cords. Instead, tissues vibrate as air is recycled within their respiratory system, allowing them to create long, sustained notes without expelling air into the water. Toothed whales produce clicks with specialized nasal structures called phonic lips. These adaptations illustrate how deeply sound production is integrated into whale biology. Their bodies are built not only to move through water, but also to fill it with resonance. The range of frequencies used by whales reflects ecological pressures. Low-frequency calls are less detailed, but travel farther, ideal for maintaining contact across open ocean. High-frequency clicks provide precision, but lose energy quickly, limiting them to shorter distances. Each species balances these trade-offs according to its needs. Blue whales, for example, favor deep, infrasonic calls under 20 hertz, while dolphins employ ultrasonic pulses exceeding 100 kilohertz. The 52 hertz whale falls in an unusual position, producing a voice neither deep enough to match the giants, nor high enough to resemble smaller cetaceans. Whale songs are not random. They follow patterns of rhythm and repetition. In humpbacks, researchers describe units, phrases, and themes organized in a hierarchical structure that resembles the syntax of language or music. The stability of these structures suggests that whales perceive them as meaningful, not merely as noise. Songs change gradually, yet within a season individuals in the same population converge on similar versions. This collective conformity implies shared learning, a rare trait among non-human animals. Over decades of research, scientists have noticed that whale songs evolve across time and space. Populations separated by distance often develop distinct dialects. When groups come into contact, one dialect may replace another in a process resembling cultural takeover. This dynamic shows that songs are not fixed genetically, but transmitted socially. It also means that a unique frequency, like that of the 52 hertz whale, may reflect not just biology, but also isolation from cultural exchange. Without peers to copy or adapt from, its song remains singular. There is a delicate balance between function and environment in all of this. Songs must be audible above the background noise of the sea. Natural sounds from waves, rain, and ice create a shifting acoustic landscape. Human activity has added new layers of interference, especially in low frequencies used by large whales. As ships became more numerous during the 20th century, their engine noise spread across the same ranges as whale communication. Some studies suggest that whales respond by calling more loudly or shifting frequencies slightly. Though these changes may carry costs in energy and effectiveness, one gentle way to picture whale singing is to imagine the ocean as a vast hall, not empty, but filled with overlapping voices. Each species has its own register, adding depth and texture to the whole. Within this hall, whales are not solitary performers, but part of an ongoing chorus. A voice at 52 hertz stands out precisely because it does not match the established harmonies. It is audible, persistent, yet without an obvious counterpart. From an evolutionary perspective, the importance of sound makes sense. For creatures living in a medium where vision is limited and scent dissipates quickly, acoustic communication offers both reach and clarity. Songs travel farther than sight, carry more detail than touch, and allow whales to coordinate over scales that no other sense could manage. Their survival strategies, migration, reproduction, feeding, all depend in some way on the transmission and reception of sound. Studying whale songs also provides insight into broader biological principles. The presence of culture, the role of learning, and the interaction between biology and environment are themes that extend beyond marine mammals. When scientists decode the patterns of these songs, they are not only learning about whales, but also about the nature of communication itself, the balance of stability and change, of tradition and innovation. Echoes patterns found in human language and music. It is helpful, perhaps, to pause and notice how this knowledge reshapes the way we think about the ocean. Instead of a silent backdrop, it emerges as a place of constant conversation. Each note and call is part of a system tuned by evolution, culture, and environment. In this view, the mystery of the 52 hertz whale becomes less about loneliness and more about divergence, a signal shaped differently, resonating on its own path within the broader sea of voices. This steady exploration of whale singing brings us closer to the question of how the 52 hertz call was first discovered. To move from theory to evidence, we must turn to the instruments and circumstances that revealed it to human ears. The next part of our journey will follow the story of early hydrophone networks and the surprise of detecting a voice no one expected. The story of the 52 hertz whale begins, not with biologists at sea, but with an entirely different mission: the strategic monitoring of oceans during the Cold War. In the 1950s and 1960s, the United States Navy developed an extensive system of underwater microphones known as hydrophones. These were part of the Sound Surveillance System, or SOSUS, designed to detect submarines moving through the Atlantic and Pacific. Stretched across long cables and placed at key points on the ocean floor, these instruments were highly sensitive, capable of recording even faint low-frequency sounds that carried across entire basins. For years, the signals captured by SOSUS remained classified. They were scrutinized by analysts trained to separate the mechanical hum of ships from the background of natural sounds. Yet within those recordings lay something more: the constant, living presence of marine animals. Whales, in particular, produced signals strong enough to appear in the same archives that were meant to track military targets. In time, as secrecy loosened, scientists gained access to portions of this data, and a new field of research began. It was in the early 1980s and 1990s that unusual signals started to attract attention. Amid the familiar calls of blue and fin whales, researchers noticed a voice that did not match. Its frequency was higher, centered around 52 hertz, and it repeated in patterns consistent with whale behavior. At first, some thought it might be mechanical noise, but further analysis revealed qualities typical of biological origin: variability in timing, shifts in amplitude, and seasonal changes that aligned with whale migrations. The pattern was too organic to be a machine, too consistent to be random. The discovery was made possible by the extraordinary reach of SOSUS. A single whale, if calling often enough, could be detected by sensors spread hundreds of kilometers apart. Analysts began to trace its movement across years. Each season, the 52 hertz voice appeared again, traveling routes that resembled those of other baleen whales, but never overlapping completely. Unlike a submarine or a ship, this signal did not move in straight lines or fixed paths. It drifted, paused, and followed rhythms of migration. In 1992, the U.S. Navy publicly acknowledged the existence of unusual biological signals in its recordings, and researchers outside the military gained more direct access. Among them was William Watkins, a biologist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. He and his team began compiling data on the 52 Hz calls, mapping them over time and space. What emerged was a portrait of a solitary track, year after year, the same distinctive signal, never joined by another of its kind. Watkins described the whale as unique. Its calls were unmistakable, always falling within the same narrow band of frequency. Unlike humpbacks, which produce long, complex songs, or blue whales, which generate deep rumbles, the 52 Hz whale seemed to repeat shorter, simpler notes. Yet these notes were strong enough to be tracked across wide expanses of ocean. By combining data from multiple hydrophones, researchers could estimate positions and trace migrations. They found that the whale moved between the Aleutian and Kodiak Islands in the North Pacific, often traveling south toward California. What puzzled scientists most was the lack of matching signals. Normally, whale calls appear in clusters. Even when individuals sing alone, their frequencies align with those of their species. Here, the case was different. For more than a decade, only one voice was recorded at 52 Hz. The absence of others gave rise to the idea of the loneliest whale, though the scientific observation was simply that no other individuals had been detected within that range. Data carried further implications. The strength and pattern of the calls indicated that the whale was large, comparable in size to a blue or fin whale. Smaller animals could not produce such sustained low-frequency energy. Yet its pitch was much higher than the 15 to 25 Hz typical of those giants. This suggested an unusual anatomy, perhaps a hybrid between species or a singular mutation that altered vocal structures. Without direct sighting, however, these remained only hypotheses. The discovery process also highlighted the changing role of technology. Instruments built for military security became tools for ecological research. Hydrophones that once listened for submarines were now capturing the rhythms of the natural world. This shift marked the beginning of modern ocean acoustics as a scientific discipline, where hidden recordings revealed aspects of marine life that had never been observed. The 52 Hz whale was among the most famous findings of this transition. One gentle way to think about this moment is as if the ocean, long speaking in its own voice, had suddenly been overheard through an unintended doorway. Analysts listening for machines instead encountered a living presence. Out of the vast soundscape, a single tone stood apart, like an instrument slightly out of tune within a larger ensemble. This metaphor captures the sense of difference, not of isolation, that defined the discovery. From a scientific perspective, the methods used to confirm the whale's existence were rigorous. Analysts filtered recordings to remove background noise, compared spectrograms to known species, and tracked call sequences across multiple stations. Each confirmation reinforced the conclusion. There was indeed a large whale producing signals at 52 Hz. The data showed seasonal regularity, indicating migration. It showed variation in intensity, consistent with movement relative to sensors. And it showed persistence over years, proving that this was not a one-time anomaly. The publication of these findings brought the whale into broader attention. Articles described it as unusual, perhaps unique. The media soon added the layer of loneliness, framing it as an animal calling into emptiness. While this language was not part of the original science, it resonated with the public imagination. The whale became a symbol, its difference translated into narrative. Yet within research circles, the focus remained on acoustics, physiology, and migration, questions of biology rather than metaphor. The period of first discovery also coincided with a broader expansion in marine research. As more hydrophones were deployed for scientific purposes, additional populations of whales were mapped and studied. Dialects of humpbacks, shifts in blue whale song frequencies, and new patterns of fin whale communication all emerged from the growing datasets. Against this background, the 52 hertz whale was both anomaly and opportunity, a case that challenged assumptions about uniformity in whale calls. The precise moment of discovery may be dated to specific years, but in truth, it was the product of decades of listening. Without the Cold War investments in acoustic surveillance, the whale's voice might never have been noticed. Without the careful work of scientists reinterpreting classified data, it might have remained hidden in archives. The convergence of geopolitics and biology produced an outcome no one had predicted: the revelation of a creature whose song lay outside the known scales of marine communication. If one pauses here, it is possible to sense the layered nature of this history. Technology designed for secrecy revealed something openly shared: the voice of a whale. Human conflicts indirectly created a record of non-human life. Out of this record came both scientific insight and cultural fascination. The whale itself, unaware of human categories, continued to sing as it always had, moving through the Pacific with steady rhythm. This first chapter in the story of the 52 hertz whale established the puzzle. A single voice, heard repeatedly, unlike any other known species. From here, the question turned to explanation. What could produce such a frequency? Was it a new kind of whale, a hybrid, or simply an individual with an unusual anatomy? The next step in this journey explores the hypotheses that scientists began to form in response to this enduring mystery. When scientists first examined the recordings of the 52 hertz whale, their attention was drawn to a single fact: the pitch of its call. Every known species of baleen whale has a typical range, evolved and refined over countless generations. The 52 hertz signal did not fit into any of those ranges. It was both familiar, because it carried the hallmarks of a whale's voice, and unfamiliar, because it occupied a frequency that no population had ever been documented using. Understanding why this pitch is unusual requires a closer look at the vocal patterns of the major whale species. Blue whales, the largest animals on Earth, produce some of the lowest sounds in the natural world. Their calls often fall between 10 and 20 hertz, so low that much of the detail lies below the threshold of human hearing. These infrasonic notes travel through the ocean with extraordinary reach, sometimes spanning entire basins. Fin whales, only slightly smaller, use calls in a similar but slightly higher range, usually between 15 and 25 hertz. These low-frequency calls are efficient. They conserve energy and carry across vast distances, making them ideal for communication during migrations that stretch thousands of kilometers. Humpback whales, in contrast, are known for their complex songs, which cover a broader frequency spectrum. Their phrases and themes range from about 80 hertz up to several kilohertz. Within this range, the notes may be audible to humans as haunting melodic tones. These songs are elaborate, lasting for minutes or hours, and are often associated with courtship displays by males. Although their frequencies overlap with human perception, they are still adapted for underwater transmission, balancing clarity with distance. Gray whales, minke whales, and other baleen species each have characteristic vocal ranges as well. Taken together, these ranges form a kind of acoustic map. Each species tends to occupy its own space in the frequency spectrum, reducing interference and ensuring that calls remain distinct. While there is variation within populations and across regions, the ranges are stable enough that biologists can identify species from recordings alone. Into this map comes the 52 Hz whale. Its calls, measured consistently at or near 52 Hz, sit in an awkward middle ground. They are too high to be mistaken for blue or fin whale calls, yet too low to resemble the typical range of humpbacks or minkies. No known population produces calls concentrated around that single pitch. For scientists, this placed the whale outside of established categories. Its song had the rhythm and structure of a baleen whale, but belonged to no recognized frequency band. The consistency of the 52 Hz signal made it even more striking. Most whale songs vary within a range, rising and falling according to context. The mysterious whale, by contrast, produced calls that clustered tightly around its distinctive frequency. Season after season, recordings captured the same unusual pitch, suggesting not an accident or temporary adaptation, but a stable trait. To illustrate why this stands out, one might imagine an orchestra where each instrument has a known role: basses in the low register, violins higher, woodwinds in between. Suddenly, a single instrument plays in a register none of the others use, audible yet unmatched. The result is not discord, but difference. It is this difference that drew attention, because in biology, persistent anomalies often point to underlying explanations yet to be uncovered. Researchers compared the 52 Hz calls with known spectrograms of other whales. The shape of the call, its duration, rise and fall, most closely resembled blue and fin whales. Yet the pitch was shifted far upward. If anatomy determines frequency, then the whale's vocal structures might have been smaller or differently shaped than those of its relatives. One hypothesis was that the animal could be a hybrid between species, inheriting traits that set its call apart. Another was that it was simply an individual with a rare mutation, producing a unique voice. The unusual frequency also had implications for communication. Whale calls are tuned to be heard by others of their species. A call outside the expected range might go unnoticed or be less effective in attracting mates. Some scientists wondered if the 52 Hz whale was, in practice, calling into emptiness. Yet the persistence of its song suggested otherwise. The whale continued to produce the same frequency for decades, indicating that it served some function. Even if different from the norm. It is important to note that frequency alone does not determine communication. Volume, repetition, and pattern all play roles. The 52 Hz whale's calls were strong and regular, often repeated in sequences similar to those of fin whales. While its pitch was unique, the rhythm was familiar. This raised the possibility that other whales could still recognize the call as biologically relevant, even if it sounded unusual. Over time, researchers also noted that the whale's frequency appeared stable, even as global patterns shifted. Blue whale songs, for example, have gradually decreased in pitch over the past half-century, though the reasons remain debated. Against this backdrop, the 52 Hz whale's voice remained steady, neither rising nor falling with the trends of other populations. This stability reinforced the impression of a singular individual rather than a changing group. From a technical perspective, the identification of this unusual frequency depended on careful analysis. Hydrophone arrays captured signals across wide ranges, and spectrograms displayed them visually. On these charts, most whale calls formed recognizable bands. The 52 hertz calls stood apart, a narrow line distinct from the rest. For those who studied the data, the image itself was a confirmation. This was not noise, nor a mistaken reading, but a real and consistent presence. Scientists are cautious about drawing conclusions from limited evidence. Without visual confirmation, the species of the 52 hertz whale remains uncertain. No one has matched the calls with direct observation of a whale at the surface. Still, the frequency itself offers strong clues. It suggests a large baleen whale, given the power and reach of the calls. It rules out smaller cetaceans, whose anatomy could not sustain such tones. Within these boundaries, the mystery persists, anchored by that one unusual pitch. One gentle way to frame this is to see the 52 hertz whale not as silent or lonely, but as occupying a different register of communication. In the layered soundscape of the ocean, each species has carved out its own niche. This whale simply sings in a space no one else has claimed. Its voice may not fit the familiar categories, but it is nonetheless part of the ongoing conversation of the sea. Reflecting on this helps explain why the 52 hertz whale became such a compelling subject. Science thrives on patterns, but it is the exceptions that often open new paths of inquiry. Here was a living creature whose biology had led it to sing in a frequency unlike any other. Its voice carried across hydrophones for decades, a reminder that even in well-studied systems, surprises remain as the evidence accumulated. The question grew: what exactly could explain this anomaly? The next step for researchers was to build hypotheses, to connect the unusual frequency with possible origins. Was it genetic, anatomical, or cultural? Could it be a hybrid, or even a member of a population yet undiscovered? These questions shaped the next phase of exploration as scientists sought to move from observation to explanation. Once scientists had confirmed that the 52 hertz signal belonged to a whale, the central question became, what kind of whale could produce such a sound? The evidence was limited to acoustic recordings, with no direct observation of the animal. Still, researchers drew on what they knew about whale anatomy, behavior, and evolution to construct hypotheses. Each explanation carried strengths and weaknesses, and none could be confirmed with certainty. Yet together, they revealed how one unusual voice could open a wide field of inquiry. The first and most straightforward hypothesis suggested that the 52 hertz whale might be a hybrid between two species. Hybrids are rare among whales, but they are known to occur, particularly between blue whales and fin whales. These two giants overlap in range and sometimes interbreed. A hybrid could inherit anatomical features from both parents, potentially leading to unusual vocal characteristics. The pitch of 52 hertz falls above the normal range of blues and fins, but below the typical range of humpbacks. In this sense, a hybrid explanation seemed plausible. Evidence for whale hybrids in the wild supports this possibility. Genetic studies have confirmed cases where individuals carry DNA from both species. In some recorded encounters, hybrids show intermediate body size and shape. If vocal anatomy also blended, the resulting song might not match either parent's repertoire. A hybrid bluefin whale could, in theory, produce a call with the structure of one species, but the pitch shifted toward the other. This would align with the spectrogram patterns of the 52 hertz calls, which resemble fin whale notes but appear at higher frequencies. Another hypothesis proposed that the whale was not a hybrid, but simply an anomalous individual within an existing species. Just as humans can have unique voices due to differences in vocal cords or resonance chambers, a whale might possess slightly altered structures in its larynx or nasal passages. A shift in tissue size or shape could raise the pitch of its call while preserving the overall rhythm and pattern. Under this explanation, the 52 Hz wail would be no different from others biologically, except for its unusual voice. This hypothesis is strengthened by the stability of the whale's calls. Year after year, the pitch remained consistent, suggesting that it was not a temporary adaptation or the result of injury. Instead, it appeared to be a fixed feature of the animal's anatomy. If true, this would make the whale unique, but not necessarily alone. Other individuals might exist with similar anomalies, but their calls could be less frequent or less easily detected. The rarity of recordings might reflect limitations of monitoring rather than absolute singularity. A third possibility considered the whale as a representative of a population yet to be documented. Our knowledge of the ocean, though extensive, is still incomplete. Some whale populations remain poorly studied, especially in remote regions. It is conceivable that a small group of whales developed or maintained a distinct vocal range, separated from larger populations by geography or culture. If such a group used calls around 52 Hz, the mystery whale could be one of its members, detected because of its regular migrations through areas covered by hydrophones. This explanation is harder to support, since no evidence of additional individuals has surfaced in decades of listening. Hydrophone networks cover wide regions, and the consistency of only a single 52 Hz track argues against an undiscovered population. Still, the ocean is vast, and acoustic coverage is not uniform. Some scientists caution against ruling out the existence of others. The absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence, especially in environments as dynamic and challenging as the sea. A fourth hypothesis looked beyond anatomy and population structure to cultural or behavioral divergence. Whale songs are not purely genetic. They are shaped by learning. Young whales may adopt the songs of adults in their group, and populations sometimes change their vocal patterns over time. If an individual failed to acquire the standard song of its species, it might develop an unusual variant. The 52 Hz wail could represent such a divergence, a voice that, through accident or isolation, settled on a frequency outside the norm. This idea draws parallels to dialects observed in humpback and sperm whales, where groups separated by distance develop distinct song patterns. Cultural transmission allows flexibility, but also leaves room for outliers. The challenge in applying this to the 52 Hz wail is that cultural variations typically involve shifts within a species' natural range, not leaps to entirely new frequencies. A whale singing consistently at 52 Hz seems more likely to reflect anatomy than culture. Still, the possibility illustrates how learning and biology intertwine in shaping communication. More speculative hypothesis linked the whale's voice to hearing impairment. If an individual were partially deaf to the frequencies of its species, it might attempt to compensate by singing at a pitch it could perceive more clearly. This occurs in some birds, where individuals raised in isolation or with hearing deficits produce atypical songs. If the 52 Hz wail had reduced sensitivity to low frequencies, it might have adjusted its calls upward. While intriguing, this idea is difficult to test, since auditory capacity cannot be measured without direct study of the animal. Some researchers also considered whether environmental factors could explain the anomaly. The physical properties of the ocean, temperature, pressure, salinity, influence how sound propagates. Could local conditions have shifted the apparent pitch of the whale's call? Analysis suggests not. The difference between 20 Hz and 52 Hz is too large to be explained by refraction or distortion. The recordings from multiple hydrophones confirmed that the source itself was producing the unusual frequency, not that the ocean was altering it. What unites all these hypotheses is an attempt to reconcile the known with the unexpected. Whales, as a group, are well studied, with characteristic songs and established ranges. A signal that falls outside these norms challenges assumptions. It requires scientists to consider hybridization, individual variation, cultural divergence, and even sensory limitations. None of the explanations fully resolve the mystery, but each adds perspective. One gentle metaphor captures the essence of these debates. Imagine a language spoken by millions, where suddenly one voice is heard using a sound no one else employs. Linguists might wonder whether it reflects a new dialect, a slip of the tongue, or the invention of a novel word. Similarly, the 52 hertz whale's call invites speculation. It is a reminder that communication is both biological and cultural, both constrained and flexible. As the years passed, researchers accumulated more recordings, but no definitive answers. The whale's identity remained elusive, suspended between possibilities. Its persistence across decades suggested resilience, but its uniqueness resisted easy categorization. The very uncertainty became part of its story, fueling both scientific inquiry and public imagination. Reflecting on these hypotheses also highlights the limits of knowledge. Without direct observation, the 52 hertz whale exists for us only as sound. Its body, its behaviors, its interactions remain unrecorded. This absence of certainty is not failure, but an opportunity. It keeps the field open to discovery, reminding us that oceans still hold secrets even in an age of satellites and global data networks. From here, the natural question becomes whether the whale was truly alone. Did the unusual pitch isolate it from others, or could it still be part of a larger conversation in ways we do not yet grasp? To address this, researchers turn to the question of solitude and perception, whether the 52 hertz whale was truly solitary, or whether its uniqueness has been misunderstood. From the moment the 52 hertz whale became known outside research circles, one idea quickly attached itself to its story, that of loneliness. Newspapers described it as the loneliest whale in the world, a creature calling into the ocean without reply. Documentaries and novels echoed the phrase, shaping public imagination. The science itself, however, never claimed loneliness. What researchers recorded was simply a unique frequency, detected repeatedly but without overlap from others. The question of solitude was more cultural than biological, and it deserves closer examination. Whales are social animals to varying degrees. Some, like sperm whales and orcas, form stable groups with complex relationships. Others, such as blue whales, may travel alone or in loose associations, joining briefly during feeding or migration. The degree of contact varies by species, by season, and by individual circumstance. To call a whale lonely assumes knowledge of its subjective experience, which science cannot provide. What we can assess instead is whether the unusual frequency of 52 hertz would have prevented it from being understood or from joining the broader acoustic environment. 1. Perspective argues that the whale truly was isolated. If communication depends on shared frequencies, then a signal at 52 hertz might fall outside the hearing sensitivity of other whales. Blue and fin whales, tuned to lower registers, might not perceive the calls clearly. Humpbacks, attuned to more varied but higher ranges, might not interpret them as meaningful. In this view, the whale's voice was biologically real, but socially ineffective, a sound produced into the ocean without reaching intended receivers. From here, the idea of loneliness follows naturally. Yet there are reasons to doubt this conclusion. Hearing in whales is not fully mapped, but evidence suggests that many species can detect a wider range of frequencies than they habitually use. A fin whale, for example, may primarily call at 20 hertz, but still perceive sounds above and below that range. In that case, a 52 hertz call would not be inaudible. It might simply be unusual. Other whales could hear it, even if they did not produce similar notes themselves. The rhythm and pattern of the 52 hertz whale's calls also matter. While the pitch was unique, the structure resembled the stereotyped sequences of fin whales. This suggests that the call carried recognizable elements. Whales listening might have been able to interpret intention, even if the pitch was higher than usual. The social effectiveness of communication depends on more than frequency. Repetition, timing, and context all contribute to meaning. Moreover, the assumption of isolation may underestimate the flexibility of whale communication. In humpback populations, songs shift collectively over time, with new patterns spreading through groups like cultural trends. This shows that whales are capable of learning and adapting. If they can adopt new phrases and themes, they may also be capable of interpreting unusual signals. A solitary frequency might not exclude an individual entirely. It might simply mark it as distinctive within a larger chorus. The persistence of the 52 hertz whale over decades also complicates the loneliness narrative. A whale unable to communicate at all would struggle to survive, as communication supports mating, navigation, and sometimes feeding. The continued presence of this individual suggests that it met its basic needs. If it were truly cut off, survival over such a long period would be unlikely. This endurance hints at interaction, even if indirect or less obvious than standard forms. There is also the matter of migration. The whale followed routes similar to other baleen whales, moving between the Aleutian Islands, the Gulf of Alaska, and the California coast. These paths are not random. They align with feeding grounds and seasonal movements shared by larger populations. It is difficult to imagine the whale traveling such routes entirely alone, year after year, without encountering others. While no second 52 hertz voice was recorded, nothing rules out the presence of companions, producing conventional frequencies. One gentle way to reframe the story is to think not of solitude, but of difference within community. Just as a person with an unusual accent can still participate in conversation, a whale with an unusual pitch might still be heard and recognized, even if imperfectly. The metaphor of loneliness captures human emotions, but may not reflect the biological reality of the ocean. What science tells us is that the whale's voice was distinctive, not that it was unanswered. The popularity of the loneliness narrative also reflects broader themes in human culture. People often project emotions onto animals, especially when confronted with signs of difference. A whale calling at a frequency no one else uses resonates with human fears of isolation. It becomes a mirror, reflecting our own experiences of being misunderstood. While powerful, this interpretation belongs more to literature than to marine biology. Researchers themselves have been careful to separate what the data show from what the imagination supplies. Still, the cultural framing has value because it draws attention to the challenges whales face in increasingly noisy oceans. The idea of a voice struggling to be heard highlights the impact of ship traffic, sonar, and industrial activity, which all compete with natural communication. Even if the 52 hertz whale was not alone, its story symbolizes how fragile the acoustic environment has become. Protecting that environment is essential for the survival of all whale populations. The question of loneliness also reminds us of the limits of our tools. Hydrophones detect frequencies, but they cannot reveal social interactions directly. A whale swimming near others, but producing a unique call, would still appear solitary in the data. Our perception of isolation may therefore be an artifact of methodology rather than a reflection of lived reality. To resolve such uncertainties, scientists would need direct observation, citing the animal and documenting its interactions. So far, this has not been possible. When considering whether the 52 hertz whale was truly alone, it is helpful to balance scientific caution with cultural resonance. The evidence shows uniqueness, but not necessarily solitude. The persistence of its calls, the overlap of its migration routes with others, and the broad hearing ranges of whales all suggest that it may not have been as isolated as once believed. Yet the story of loneliness remains compelling, not because it is proven, but because it speaks to human emotions. This duality, data on one side, imagination on the other, has kept the 52 hertz whale in public memory. It exists both as a subject of science and as a symbol. For researchers, the challenge is to continue asking what its voice reveals about anatomy, culture, and survival. For the public, the tale continues to inspire empathy and reflection. Between these layers lies the enduring mystery, a whale that sings differently, heard but never seen. From this point, the exploration shifts from perception to environment. To understand how the whale's calls traveled and how they were heard by scientists, we must look at the physics of sound itself, the role of low and high frequencies, the distances they cover, and the way they shape communication across the oceans. To understand the place of the 52 hertz whale in the acoustic world of the ocean, it is essential to look at how different frequencies behave in water. Unlike light, which is absorbed quickly, sound can travel long distances beneath the surface. But not all sounds travel in the same way. Their reach, clarity, and purpose depend on frequency. Low notes behave differently from high ones, and marine life has evolved to use this spectrum in ways that suit their needs. Dot sound is a wave, and its frequency measures how many cycles occur per second. Low frequencies mean long wavelengths, while high frequencies mean short ones. In seawater, these physical differences matter. Long wavelengths lose little energy and can travel for hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. Short wavelengths, by contrast, dissipate quickly, limiting them to local ranges but offering more detail. For whales and other marine animals, this trade-off between distance and resolution is central to communication strategies. Blue whales exemplify the low-frequency end of the spectrum. Their calls, sometimes below 20 hertz, are so deep that humans cannot hear them without special equipment. These infrasonic sounds spread across entire ocean basins, using the SOFIR channel as a conduit. A single call can carry information from one side of the Pacific to the other. Such reach allows individuals to maintain contact during migrations, even when separated by vast distances. In the absence of light, these deep notes form a bridge across the ocean's scale. At the other extreme are dolphins and some smaller whales. Their whistles and clicks operate in high frequencies, often tens or hundreds of kilohertz. These sounds are precise, bouncing off objects and returning as echoes. Echolocation provides a detailed map of the environment, revealing the shape, size, and even the texture of nearby prey. But these signals fade quickly in water, traveling only a few hundred meters. They are perfectly suited for local navigation and hunting, but ineffective for long-distance communication. Between these extremes lies a wide middle range, used for varied purposes. Humpback whales sing songs that extend from low frequencies up to several kilohertz. These sounds balance distance with richness, carrying far enough to attract mates while still allowing complexity. Minke whales produce pulses and bowings at intermediate frequencies. Each species has adapted its use of sound to its ecological role, finding a place in the shared spectrum of the ocean. The 52 hertz whale sits in this middle zone. Its voice is lower than most humpbacks, but higher than the giants. This position is unusual because it does not align with the established ranges that other species have optimized for communication. Yet it is not outside the limits of propagation. At 52 hertz, sound still travels far, though not as far as at 20 hertz. It can cover hundreds of kilometers, enough for migration-scale contact. The whale's voice is therefore not weak or confined. It is simply distinct, a different choice of frequency in a world where most species cluster elsewhere. The efficiency of sound transmission depends not only on frequency, but also on ocean conditions. Temperature, salinity, and pressure shape how far a wave can go. Low-frequency sounds benefit most, bending into channels where they can travel extraordinary distances. High-frequency sounds scatter, absorbed by turbulence and particles. This explains why evolution has driven large whales toward low notes. Survival often depends on communication across wide ranges. For smaller animals with more local needs, high frequencies provide sharper tools for immediate tasks. Researchers studying the acoustic ecology of the ocean often compare it to a layered system. Low-frequency sounds form a kind of background, a deep hum that carries far. Mid-range frequencies create patterns of social and mating calls. High frequencies add detail, rapid exchanges, and navigation cues. Together, they make the sea a dynamic soundscape, structured by physics but filled with biology. Each species has tuned itself to this landscape over millions of years. The presence of human-made noise has highlighted the importance of these frequency bands. Ship engines and propellers generate powerful low-frequency noise, overlapping with the range of blue and fin whale calls. Sonar, by contrast, often operates at higher frequencies, interfering with echolocation. The overlap is not accidental, but reflects the same physics. Low frequencies are efficient for distance. High frequencies are useful for resolution. By adding noise to these bands, human activity directly competes with natural communication. In this context, the 52 hertz whale becomes even more intriguing. Its calls may stand apart from the main clusters of frequencies used by other species, but that also means less overlap with noise. In some ways, the whale may have occupied an acoustic niche where fewer sounds compete. While we cannot say whether this gave it an advantage or disadvantage, it shows how unique frequencies interact with a larger environment. From a physiological standpoint, producing low versus high frequencies requires different adaptations. Large body size and long vocal tracts support the generation of deep, infrasonic sounds. Smaller structures allow higher pitches. The 52 hertz whale, based on the power of its calls, must have been large, comparable to other baleen whales. Yet its anatomy somehow produced a voice that did not match its size. This mismatch between expected frequency and body scale is what continues to puzzle researchers. One gentle way to picture these differences is to imagine the ocean as a space, filled with overlapping bands of color, each corresponding to a frequency range. Some colors stretch far, but remain faint. Others are vivid, but confined to small spaces. The 52 hertz whale glows in a shade not typically seen, not absent, but distinct. This metaphor helps place its calls within the spectrum without exaggerating isolation. Studies of communication ranges remind us that whales are not bound by precise categories. While most blue whales call at 20 hertz, there is natural variation, and songs can shift over time. Some populations use slightly higher or lower pitches, influenced by culture or environment. The fact that 52 hertz is rare does not mean it is impossible. It simply means that the balance of anatomy and tradition has not led most whales to adopt it. Understanding these dynamics also helps in conservation. Protecting whales requires maintaining acoustic habitats where their calls can be heard. If noise overwhelms low frequencies, then even the most powerful songs may lose reach. If sonar saturates higher ranges, then echolocation may fail. Recognizing how frequency shapes communication makes it clear why preserving quiet spaces in the ocean is essential. The survival of whales depends not only on food and migration corridors, but also on acoustic corridors where sound can travel unhindered. Reflecting on the significance of sound in water, it becomes clear that the 52 hertz whale is not simply an anomaly, but a case study in how biology interacts with physics. Its voice sits at a point on the spectrum where distance and clarity overlap, though not in the way most species have chosen. Whether this was the product of anatomy, culture, or chance remains unknown. But the whale's calls demonstrate the flexibility of life within the constraints of nature. From here, the story leads naturally toward the instruments and methods that allow us to hear such signals at all. Hydrophones and long-term listening stations provide the windows through which scientists observe this hidden world. The next part of the journey explores these technologies and the role they play in uncovering the mysteries of ocean sound. The discovery of the 52 hertz whale was possible only because of advances in underwater listening. The ocean is vast, dark, and often inaccessible. Visual observation of whales, while valuable, is limited to moments when they surface. Most of their lives unfold unseen beneath hundreds or thousands of meters of water. Sound provides the only way to follow them continuously, and hydrophones are the tools that make this possible. A hydrophone is, in essence, a microphone designed for water. It converts pressure changes caused by sound waves into electrical signals. The principle is straightforward, but the engineering must withstand pressure, corrosion, and the dynamics of deep-sea conditions. Hydrophones can be lowered from ships, attached to drifting buoys, or mounted permanently on the seabed. When deployed in networks, they record continuously, building an acoustic picture of the underwater world. The earliest large-scale hydrophone systems were military. During the Cold War, the United States Navy constructed the Sound Surveillance System, SOSUS, placing long arrays of hydrophones on the ocean floor. These arrays could detect the low-frequency hum of submarines across entire ocean basins. To achieve this, they had to be extremely sensitive, capable of recording faint sounds carried by the SOFAR channel. Decades later, these same instruments revealed the songs of whales, including the anomalous 52 hertz calls. When portions of SOSUS data were eventually shared with civilian scientists, a new era of ocean research began. Researchers gained access to vast archives of recordings spanning years and covering wide regions. They could study migration patterns, population sizes, and even seasonal behaviors. The archives revealed that the ocean was never silent. Fin whales pulsed steadily, blue whales rumbled deeply, and humpbacks sang their complex sequences. Against this background, the unique line of the 52 hertz whale stood out. Modern hydrophones have extended this capability beyond military systems. Universities and research institutions deploy arrays to monitor specific regions. These arrays may include dozens of hydrophones spaced over kilometers, triangulating the location of sound sources. By comparing the time a call reaches each hydrophone, scientists can calculate the direction and distance of the whale. This technique, called localization, allows not only the detection of a call, but also the mapping of an animal's movements. Some hydrophones are autonomous, placed on moorings or floats that drift with currents. These devices record for months before surfacing and transmitting data. Others are cabled to shore, sending signals in real time to laboratories. The variety of deployments reflects the complexity of the ocean. Some regions require long-term stationary monitoring, while others benefit from mobile coverage. Together, these systems create a growing network of underwater ears. Spectrograms are the main tool used to analyze the recordings. A spectrogram transforms sound into a visual representation, showing frequency on one axis and time on another. Patterns become visible as lines or shapes. The 52 Hz whale appears as a narrow band, steady and repeating. For analysts, this image is as clear as a fingerprint. By scanning spectrograms, researchers can quickly distinguish species, identify unusual signals, and follow changes over time. Beyond detection, hydrophone data has revealed broader trends in whale communication. For example, blue whale calls have gradually decreased in pitch over the past half-century, a phenomenon not yet fully understood. Fin whale songs show seasonal variations linked to migration. Humpback dialects shift from year to year, spreading across populations in waves of cultural change. Without long-term listening, such patterns would remain invisible. Projects dedicated to passive acoustic monitoring now operate worldwide. The International Quiet Ocean Experiment, launched in the 2010s, coordinates research on how human noise affects marine life. Regional initiatives track whale populations to guide conservation, especially in shipping lanes where collisions are a risk. Acoustic data provides population estimates that complement visual surveys, especially in remote or harsh conditions. The archives of recordings also serve as historical records. By revisiting tapes from the 1960s and 1970s, researchers can compare past and present, tracing how whale populations and their songs have changed. In this sense, hydrophone data is not only a scientific tool, but also a form of memory, capturing the shifting soundscape of the seas. One gentle metaphor captures this role. Hydrophones are like journals of the ocean, preserving voices that would otherwise vanish into the deep. The 52 Hz whale has become one of the most famous examples of what hydrophones can reveal. Without instruments, its voice would have gone unnoticed, hidden beneath layers of water. With them, it became a steady presence in the data, recorded year after year. This illustrates how technology extends human perception into environments we cannot directly experience. It also shows how much remains to be discovered, as every dataset contains signals that may defy expectation. Of course, hydrophones also capture the sounds of human activity. Ship engines, seismic surveys, and sonar pulses all appear on spectrograms. These signals are not just noise, but indicators of how human presence transforms the ocean. In some cases, scientists use hydrophones to study the impact of these sounds on marine life, comparing behavior in noisy and quiet conditions. Conservation policies increasingly rely on such findings to regulate industrial activity. The spread of hydrophone networks has raised new possibilities for global collaboration. Data can be shared across institutions, allowing researchers on different continents to compare findings. Citizen science projects have emerged where volunteers help scan spectrograms for whale calls, turning analysis into a collective effort. The accessibility of data has broadened awareness of the acoustic dimension of the sea, once known only to specialists. Hydrophones are not the only listening devices. Gliders, autonomous underwater vehicles, can be equipped with microphones, covering wide areas and transmitting results via satellite. Tags attached to individual whales record not only sounds produced, but also the surrounding environment. offering insights into how animals experience their acoustic world. Together, these methods provide a layered picture: population-level monitoring from arrays, regional data from gliders, and individual records from tags. The precision of acoustic monitoring continues to improve. Machine learning now assists in identifying species automatically, recognizing patterns too subtle for manual inspection. This technology speeds up analysis of vast archives, some containing tens of thousands of hours of recordings. As algorithms become more sophisticated, they may uncover signals currently overlooked, perhaps even new anomalies similar to the 52 hertz whale, reflecting on these technologies highlights how the study of whales has shifted from rare sightings to continuous listening. What once depended on chance encounters now relies on systematic archives. The ocean, once opaque, is increasingly transparent through sound. Yet even with this progress, mysteries remain. And the 52 hertz whale is a reminder that data alone does not always yield complete answers. From here, the focus turns naturally to the changing acoustic environment itself. Human activity has not only enabled the detection of unusual voices, but also altered the background against which they are heard. To understand what this means for whales, we must consider the rise of ocean noise and its consequences for communication, migration, and survival. When the 52 hertz whale was first detected, it was noticed in part because the ocean was already becoming filled with human sounds. In the middle of the 20th century, the seas underwent a transformation. Where once the dominant voices were wind, rain, ice, earthquakes, and the songs of marine animals, now new layers appeared: the hum of engines, the pulse of sonar, and the blasts of industrial activity. This acoustic change is one of the most significant alterations to the marine environment in modern history. The expansion of global shipping is central to this story. Merchant fleets now carry over 90% of the world's trade, with tens of thousands of large vessels moving constantly across the seas. Each ship produces sound as its engines run, its propellers rotate, and its hull vibrates against the water. The resulting noise is concentrated at low frequencies, often between 10 and 200 hertz, the same range used by many baleen whales. These low rumbles travel far, sometimes hundreds of kilometers, and they overlap directly with the frequencies of blue, fin, and even the 52 hertz whale dot. The increase in shipping traffic has been dramatic. Since the 1950s, commercial fleets have expanded many times over. Cargo vessels are larger, faster, and more numerous than at any previous time. As a result, the background noise in parts of the ocean has risen by as much as 10 to 20 decibels. This may not sound like much in human terms, but in acoustic energy, it represents a tenfold increase. What was once a relatively quiet environment for long-distance whale calls has become filled with continuous, human-generated sound. Naval sonar is another powerful contributor. Sonar, short for sound navigation and ranging, uses pulses of sound to detect objects underwater. Active sonar systems emit strong signals and listen for echoes. Military sonars can reach extreme intensities, capable of detecting submarines at great distances. Unfortunately, these signals can also disturb marine animals. In some cases, exposure to high-intensity sonar has been linked to strandings of beaked whales and disruptions in behavior. The frequencies used vary, but many overlap with the hearing ranges of whales and dolphins, creating interference. Industrial activity adds further layers. Seismic surveys used in oil and gas exploration generate repeated blasts of sound to map the seabed. These pulses can continue for weeks or months, saturating regions with noise. Offshore construction, such as pile driving for wind farms or drilling for resources, contributes additional bursts. While localized, these activities can dominate the soundscape in their areas, masking natural communication and forcing animals to alter their behavior. Together, these human sounds reshape the ocean's acoustic environment. Whales that once relied on low-frequency calls to communicate across hundreds of kilometers now face competition from engines and machinery. Some populations have responded by increasing the volume of their calls, a phenomenon known as the Lombard effect. Others have shifted frequencies slightly upward or downward. These adjustments help temporarily, but they require more energy and may reduce effectiveness. Communication becomes less reliable, and the effort itself imposes costs on survival and reproduction. The effects extend beyond whales. Fish, invertebrates, and other marine organisms also use sound for communication, orientation, and predator detection. Studies show that elevated noise levels can disrupt feeding, reduce reproductive success, and increase stress in many species. In this sense, the transformation of the soundscape is not limited to charismatic megafauna but affects the ocean ecosystem broadly. It is important to recognize that noise is not uniformly distributed. Some regions, such as major shipping lanes in the North Atlantic or North Pacific, experience constant low-frequency sound. Others remain relatively quiet, especially remote areas of the Southern Ocean or the deep Arctic, though even these are changing as human activity expands. The variability means that some populations may be more heavily affected than others, depending on their migratory routes and habitats. One gentle way to think of this change is to imagine a conversation in a crowded room. When the background is quiet, voices carry easily. As the room fills with chatter, each person must speak louder or repeat themselves to be heard. Eventually, some messages are lost altogether. The ocean has become that crowded room, and whales are adjusting in the only ways available to them. The 52 hertz whale lived within this shifting background. Its unique frequency might have been less masked than the deepest calls of blue or fin whales, since it sat slightly higher than the main range of shipping noise. At the same time, it was not entirely free of overlap. The very persistence of its calls across decades shows resilience. But it also raises questions. Did the rising noise help obscure its voice from potential listeners, reinforcing the perception of solitude? Or did its unusual pitch serve as a kind of adaptation, placing it outside the noisiest bands of human activity? Scientists studying these questions emphasize that noise pollution is not just an aesthetic concern, but a biological stressor. Elevated background sound increases the effort required for communication, interferes with navigation, and may even mask environmental cues. Whales and other marine animals evolved in oceans dominated by natural sounds, not continuous industrial hums. Their strategies are finely tuned to physics, but the baseline has shifted in a single human lifetime. Responses to this challenge have begun to emerge. International agreements encourage quieter ship designs, from improved propellers to hull modifications. Speed restrictions reduce both fuel consumption and noise output. Some shipping companies have adopted voluntary measures to minimize disturbance near sensitive habitats. For sonar and seismic surveys, regulations in certain regions require pauses during migration seasons or when whales are detected nearby. While these steps are limited, they reflect growing awareness that the ocean's acoustic environment is part of its ecology and must be protected. The story of human noise in the sea illustrates how quickly environments can change and how deeply animals depend on conditions we often overlook. Sound, invisible to us, is the primary medium of life underwater. Altering it reshapes interactions across species. For whales, whose survival rests on communication, the consequences are profound. From this understanding, the 52 hertz whale becomes more than an anomaly. It becomes part of a broader narrative about resilience in a changing ocean. Its singular voice was detected against a backdrop increasingly filled with human sound. That it continued to be heard at all testifies to the persistence of natural communication even under stress. Reflecting on this brings us naturally to the ecological scale. Human noise is only one piece of the puzzle. Climate change, melting ice, and shifting habitats also alter the soundscape. The next step is to consider how ecology and acoustics interact, shaping not just the experience of a single whale, but the future of entire populations. Whales live in an environment where sound is not just a tool of communication, but a foundation for survival. Their migrations, feeding, and reproduction all depend on the reliable flow of acoustic information. When human noise intrudes into this system, the effects ripple far beyond individual interactions. It influences whole populations and alters ecological relationships. To understand why the 52 hertz whale matters in this wider picture, it is useful to examine how noise interacts with the biological cycles of whales. Migration is one of the most striking behaviors in baleen whales. Blue, fin, and gray whales travel thousands of kilometers each year, moving between feeding grounds in polar regions and breeding areas in warmer waters. These migrations require coordination, navigation, and contact between individuals spread across wide distances. Low-frequency calls provide the signals that guide these journeys. They act like acoustic signposts, marking locations, synchronizing timing, and maintaining social bonds even when whales are separated by hundreds of kilometers. Noise disrupts these processes by masking signals. If a ship passes through a migratory corridor, its engines produce low-frequency sounds that overlap with whale calls. A note that might normally travel 500 kilometers may be lost in the background hum, reducing its effective range to 50 kilometers or less. The result is fragmentation of communication networks. Groups that once stayed connected may drift apart, and individuals may struggle to locate one another during the critical breeding season. Research has documented shifts in migration routes when noise levels are high. In the North Atlantic, some populations of right whales alter their paths to avoid shipping lanes, even if it means longer travel. Such detours increase energy costs and may reduce access to feeding grounds. In the Pacific, gray whales have shown avoidance of areas where seismic surveys are active, moving farther offshore or abandoning traditional routes. Each adjustment has ecological consequences, changing where whales feed, rest, and reproduce. Reproduction is also closely tied to sound. Many species rely on vocalizations during courtship. Humpback whales are famous for their complex songs, repeated for hours by males competing for attention. Fin and blue whales use simpler, powerful notes to announce their presence. In all cases, the effectiveness of these calls depends on being heard. If noise masks them, the chances of attracting mates decrease. Over time, this can reduce reproductive success and affect population growth. Some whales attempt to compensate by increasing the volume of their calls. Studies of North Atlantic right whales show that they raise their voices when background noise rises, much like people shouting in a loud room. While effective in the short term, this strategy carries costs. Louder calls require more energy, diverting resources from other needs such as feeding and nursing. It may also increase stress, as animals must work harder to maintain normal interactions. Chronic stress is linked to weakened immune systems and reduced reproductive success, There is also evidence that noise can alter the timing of reproduction. If signals are not transmitted effectively, mating seasons may be less synchronized. In species that rely on precise timing, such as those that migrate to breeding grounds once a year, small disruptions can lead to fewer successful pairings. Over decades, even modest reductions in reproductive rates can have major impacts on population stability. Calves and mothers are particularly vulnerable. Young whales depend on close contact calls to remain near their mothers in the open sea. These calls are higher in frequency than the deep songs of males, but they can still be masked by overlapping noise. If calves cannot hear their mothers clearly, the risk of separation rises. For species with long parental investment, such as sperm whales or humpbacks, separations can be fatal. Protecting the acoustic channel between mother and calf is therefore critical for population survival. The ecological consequences extend beyond whales themselves. Many marine species use sound for spawning, schooling, or habitat selection. Fish choruses, for example, create background rhythms that guide larval settlement. Noise can disrupt these cues, altering where fish congregate and where predators find prey. In this way, human sounds reshape food webs, with indirect effects on whales that depend on fish or krill. The ocean soundscape is not just a medium for whales, but a framework for entire ecosystems. One gentle metaphor helps capture this complexity. Imagine the ocean as a great network of threads woven by sound. Each call, click, or rumble strengthens a connection, linking individuals to groups and groups to ecosystems. When human noise cuts across these threads, the fabric weakens. The structure does not collapse immediately, but its resilience declines. Over time, holes appear and the network frays. The 52 Hz whale lived within this changing fabric. Its unique frequency may have given it advantages in avoiding the lowest bands of shipping noise, but it did not escape entirely. The same pressures that affect other whales, reduced communication range, higher energy costs, altered timing, likely influenced it as well. Its persistence shows adaptation, but adaptation does not eliminate stress. The whale's unusual voice highlights how finely tuned these systems are and how easily they can be disturbed. Scientists emphasize that acoustic disturbance interacts with other challenges. Climate change is shifting the distribution of prey, forcing whales to travel farther or alter their migrations. Melting ice is opening new shipping routes in the Arctic, adding noise to previously quiet regions. Ocean acidification may subtly change how sound propagates, altering acoustic conditions further. Noise is not an isolated problem, but part of a constellation of pressures that together shape whale ecology. Efforts to mitigate these effects include the designation of marine protected areas, where noise-generating activities are restricted. Seasonal closures of shipping lanes during migrations can reduce risks. Technological innovations, such as quieter propeller designs, offer promise. Monitoring with hydrophones ensures that policies are guided by data. Yet challenges remain, as the demand for ocean resources continues to grow. Reflecting on these ecological links shows why studying the 52 Hz whale is more than a curiosity. Its anomalous voice reminds us that communication is central to life in the ocean. If noise disrupts that communication, it undermines reproduction, migration, and survival. The mystery whale symbolizes resilience, but also fragility, an individual persisting within an environment increasingly shaped by human presence. From this perspective, the next step is to consider how the whale's story has entered human culture. Beyond biology and ecology, the 52 Hz whale has become a symbol of difference and endurance. Appearing in literature, film, and art, its unusual song is not only a scientific puzzle, but also a cultural touchstone. The scientific story of the 52 hertz whale is one of acoustic monitoring, migration, and physiology. Yet outside research, the whale became something more, a cultural symbol. Its unusual frequency, combined with the perception of solitude, inspired headlines, films, songs, and artworks. This transformation illustrates how scientific observations can escape the boundaries of laboratories and enter collective imagination. The 52 hertz whale is now known not only as a data point in acoustic archives, but also as the loneliest whale, a phrase that carries emotional resonance far beyond biology. The phrase first appeared in the early 2000s, after researchers such as William Watkins published studies describing a whale calling at an unusual pitch. Journalists, fascinated by the idea of a unique voice never matched by others, began to describe the whale in human terms. Loneliest whale in the world became a recurring headline. It condensed complex science into a simple story that anyone could understand, a voice crying out without answer. While the evidence for loneliness was never scientific, the narrative proved powerful. Popular media quickly adopted the image. Articles in major newspapers and magazines told the story of a whale wandering the Pacific, unheard by its kind. Documentaries presented it as a mystery, blending science with emotional commentary. Music artists wrote songs inspired by the whale, using it as a metaphor for isolation or individuality. Writers wove it into novels and poems. Over time, the whale became part of modern folklore, recognized even by people with little knowledge of marine biology. One reason the story resonated so widely is that humans naturally project feelings onto animals, especially when they display traits that seem relatable. A whale with a unique voice echoes human experiences of difference, of speaking in ways that others may not understand. The metaphor of loneliness found a receptive audience in societies where themes of alienation and individuality are common in art and literature. In this sense, the whale's song became a canvas on which people painted their own emotions. At the same time, the whale's cultural journey reflects broader trends in how science enters public life. Complex data about acoustic frequencies and hydrophone networks may not attract wide attention, but when framed as a story about solitude, the same data becomes memorable. Media often simplifies and humanizes scientific findings, sometimes at the expense of accuracy. The 52 hertz whale illustrates this process vividly, from spectrograms in a laboratory to headlines across the world. The cultural impact also spurred new forms of engagement with marine conservation. Films such as The Loneliest Whale, The Search for 52 used the story as an entry point to discuss ocean noise, whale biology, and the challenges of protecting marine environments. By linking emotion with science, these works reached audiences that might not otherwise engage with conservation issues. The whale thus served as a bridge between public imagination and ecological awareness. Music provided another medium of influence. Several bands and solo artists composed pieces inspired by the whale, blending recordings of low-frequency sounds with human instruments. These works treated the whale's voice as both scientific artifact and artistic symbol. In some compositions, the 52 hertz tone was reproduced digitally, allowing listeners to experience the frequency in ways that connected data to emotion. This blending of art and science reinforced the whale's role as an icon of difference. Visual art also embraced the theme. Paintings, installations, and digital projects portrayed the whale as a solitary figure in vast blue expanses. While often dramatized, these images conveyed the scale of the ocean and the uniqueness of the voice. Exhibitions used the whale as a symbol of environmental change. inviting viewers to reflect on the fragility of marine life in a human-dominated world. One gentle metaphor helps capture this role. The whale became like a note carried from the depths into human culture. Sustained and transformed as it passed through different media. The internet amplified this symbolic presence. Social media platforms shared articles, quotes, and artworks about the loneliest whale. Memes and posts spread the idea rapidly, often without reference to the underlying science. In online culture, the whale became a shorthand for uniqueness and unreciprocated communication. While simplified, these expressions kept the story alive, reaching generations far removed from the original research. From an academic perspective, this transformation raises questions about how science and culture interact. On one hand, the narrative of loneliness risks distorting facts. It suggests knowledge of subjective experience that science cannot confirm. On the other hand, it demonstrates the power of stories to engage attention and inspire action. The popularity of the 52 hertz whale has drawn new audiences to marine research, funding films, and stimulating conservation conversations. The persistence of the whale in culture also highlights how humans interpret difference. What scientists described as a frequency anomaly became, in public imagination, a story about identity and isolation. This shift reflects broader human tendencies to seek meaning in patterns. Where researchers saw data, others saw metaphor. Both perspectives coexist, each revealing something about how we understand the world. One soft invitation here may be useful. It is worth noticing how a single line on a spectrogram turned into a global story. This reminds us that knowledge travels in unexpected ways, shaped not only by accuracy, but also by resonance with human concerns. The 52 hertz whale resonates because it combines mystery with emotion, science with symbolism. Over time, the whale's cultural significance has influenced conservation language. Campaigns often use the idea of being heard or unheard to frame the need for quieter oceans. The metaphor of loneliness makes the abstract problem of acoustic pollution more tangible. People who might not connect with decibel charts or frequency ranges can connect with the idea of a whale struggling to be heard. In this way, culture supports ecology, even if the details of the story are simplified. The 52 hertz whale is not the first animal to become a cultural symbol, but it is distinctive in being known only through sound. Unlike charismatic species visible in photographs or videos, this whale has never been identified visually. Its presence exists entirely in recordings, yet it has inspired artworks across media. This makes it a rare case where absence of imagery did not limit cultural impact. Instead, the very invisibility deepened its mystery. As we consider this cultural journey, it is important to return to the foundation, the whale itself, continuing its migrations, producing its calls year after year. The cultural layers are human interpretations, built on top of scientific data. They do not change the whale's biology, but they change our relationship to it. The loneliest whale exists both as an individual in the Pacific and as an idea in global culture. This dual existence leads naturally to broader comparisons. The 52 hertz whale is not the only animal with unusual communication, but it is the most widely recognized. To place its story in perspective, we can look at other cases where individuals or groups of whales have produced distinct dialects or calls. Such examples help show that difference is part of the natural variability of communication, not always a sign of isolation. The 52 hertz whale is often described as unique, yet it is not the only case of unusual vocal behavior in the ocean. Whales, like many animals, show variation in their calls. Some differences are small, reflecting individual identity, while others expand into larger patterns known as dialects. By studying these cases, scientists place the 52 Hz whale into a broader context. It is unusual, but not isolated from the natural diversity of communication. One of the clearest examples comes from humpback whales. Their songs are among the most studied in the animal kingdom. Within a population, males often converge on the same song pattern, repeating themes and phrases in a shared structure. Yet these songs evolve. Over months or years, new elements are added, old ones fade, and entire populations shift together to new versions. Sometimes a song from one region spreads to another, replacing the local version completely. Researchers describe this as cultural transmission, a form of learning that moves across groups. Within these patterns, however, individuals still introduce variations. A whale may emphasize a certain phrase differently, repeat it more often, or slightly alter its pitch. These differences are not mistakes, but part of the natural flexibility of song. They may help an individual stand out during courtship or reflect personal style within the shared framework. While not as extreme as the 52 Hz anomaly, such individuality shows that whale communication is not rigid. It balances conformity with diversity. Sperm whales provide another example. They communicate with series of clicks known as codas. Different groups, or clans, have distinct repertoires, recognizable like dialects. Members of the same clan share patterns, while groups in different regions may use alternative codas. These dialects persist across generations, suggesting a cultural foundation. Yet within each clan, individuals also add personal touches, variations in rhythm or timing that mark identity. In this way, sperm whales demonstrate both group-level culture and individual expression. Killer whales, orcas, are perhaps the best-known case of dialects in whales. Pods living in the same geographic area often use different call repertoires. These dialects are stable across decades, transmitted from mothers to offspring. They function as markers of group identity, allowing whales to recognize kin and distinguish outsiders. Researchers have shown that some pods even respond differently depending on whether a call comes from their own group or a neighboring one. Here, vocal differences serve a social function, structuring interactions between communities. The existence of dialects and individual variations shows that whales are not uniform in their communication. Just as humans speak in different accents and languages, whales produce diverse calls shaped by culture, geography, and biology. Against this backdrop, the 52 Hz whale may be unusual but not incomprehensible. It may simply represent an extreme case of variation, a voice so distinct that it falls outside established categories. Scientists have also documented temporary deviations in whale calls. For example, when background noise increases, whales sometimes shift their frequencies upward to avoid masking. These shifts are usually small, only a few hertz, but they show flexibility in response to environment. If environmental pressures can alter frequency, then more permanent deviations might arise from individual circumstances. The 52 Hz whale's call could be seen as an amplified version of this adaptive process. Another relevant case is the gradual decline in blue whale call frequencies observed globally. Over the past 50 years, average pitches of blue whale songs have dropped by several hertz. The reasons remain debated. Some suggest it reflects population recovery after whaling. With more individuals, whales may not need to call as loudly or as high. Others propose environmental changes affecting sound propagation. Whatever the cause, this shift shows that even large-scale communication patterns can change significantly over decades. Variation also occurs in the bowhead whale, which inhabits Arctic waters. Unlike humpbacks, bowheads continually create new songs rather than repeating a shared pattern. Each year brings fresh compositions with different structures and frequencies. This creative flexibility is unusual among whales and demonstrates the capacity for innovation. The 52 Hz whale might not be part of such a system, but its uniqueness echoes the principle that vocal diversity is part of cetacean biology. One gentle metaphor can help situate these examples. Think of the ocean soundscape as a conversation with many voices. Most follow familiar patterns, but occasionally someone speaks in a new accent or introduces a novel phrase. The conversation adapts, sometimes adopting the change, sometimes letting it remain singular. The 52 Hz whale's call may be one of those rare voices, distinctive, persistent, but still part of the larger exchange. These cases of dialects and individual variation also highlight the importance of learning in whale communication. Unlike signals that are entirely innate, many whale calls require exposure to others. Young humpbacks learn songs from adult males. Orcas acquire dialects from their pods. This cultural component allows for flexibility, but also creates room for divergence. If an individual misses exposure to the standard pattern, or if it experiments beyond the norm, it may produce something unusual. Culture, in this sense, creates both stability and possibility. It is worth noting that such variability is not unique to whales. Birds provide a parallel. Songbirds often develop local dialects, with populations singing slightly different versions of the same species' song. Individuals can deviate further, producing unique variations. In primates, too, certain vocal behaviors vary between groups. These comparisons show that communication systems across animals are not static but dynamic. Shaped by both biology and culture, the study of unusual calls has practical value. By identifying dialects, scientists can track populations, distinguish groups, and monitor cultural transmission. Conservation efforts sometimes rely on these acoustic signatures to identify distinct populations that need protection. Individual anomalies, like the 52 Hz whale, may not have the same direct application, but they remind us of the range of possibilities within communication systems. Reflecting on these examples, the 52 Hz whale seems less like an outlier and more like part of a spectrum of diversity. Its frequency is extreme, but variation itself is common. Dialects, shifts, and innovations are all natural. The whale's persistence across decades suggests that even unusual voices can survive in the oceans. Complex acoustic world. From here, the natural next step is to explore how whales' broader intelligence and memory contribute to these variations. Understanding their capacity for learning and cultural transmission requires looking beyond calls alone into cognition and social behavior. To understand the 52 Hz whale within the broader frame of biology, it helps to look at what science has revealed about whale intelligence and memory. Communication, culture, and unusual voices all depend on cognitive capacities that allow whales to learn, remember, and adapt. Research over the past decades has shown that whales and dolphins, collectively known as cetaceans, possess some of the most complex brains in the animal kingdom. Their intelligence is expressed not only in problem solving, but also in social learning, cultural traditions, and long-term memory. Anatomically, whale brains are large both in absolute size and in relation to body mass. Sperm whales have the largest brains of any living animal, weighing up to 8 kilograms. But size alone does not define intelligence. What matters is organization. Cetacean brains are highly convoluted, with dense folds in the neocortex, the region associated with higher functions such as perception, decision-making, and social interaction. They also show expanded areas of the limbic system, which is linked to emotion and memory. These structural features suggest capacities beyond simple reflexes. Behavioral studies support this view. Dolphins, which are smaller but closely related, demonstrate remarkable problem-solving skills. They can recognize themselves in mirrors, a test often used to assess self-awareness. They use tools, such as sponges, to protect their snouts while foraging on the seafloor. They also learn new behaviors by imitation, copying not only physical actions, but also novel sounds. Such abilities indicate flexible intelligence, not rigid instinct in baleen whales. Direct experiments are more difficult because of their size and lifestyle. Still, indirect evidence shows advanced cognition. Humpback whales, for instance, create complex songs that evolve over time and spread across populations. This requires memory of sequences, comparison with others, and the ability to modify output, processes resembling cultural learning. Cooperative feeding strategies, such as bubble net feeding in humpbacks, also reveal planning and coordination. As individuals take complementary roles in encircling prey, memory plays a crucial role in whale survival. Migration depends on remembering routes across thousands of kilometers. Gray whales, for example, return to the same lagoons in Baja California each year, a journey of more than 10,000 kilometers round trip. Mothers guide calves along these paths, passing knowledge across generations. This long-term memory of geography is essential in environments that change seasonally. Acoustic memory is equally vital. Whales recognize the calls of relatives and group members, sometimes after years of separation. Orcas can identify pod-specific dialects, and individuals respond preferentially to the voices of familiar companions. Such recognition implies a memory system capable of storing detailed acoustic templates and retrieving them when needed. For the 52 hertz whale, memory would shape not only migration, but also the persistence of its unique call. The fact that it repeated the same frequency for decades suggests a stable internal template guiding its song. Some scientists argue that cetacean intelligence must be viewed through the lens of social complexity. The social brain hypothesis proposes that large brains evolved in part to manage relationships within groups. Cetaceans fit this model well. Many species live in pods with intricate hierarchies, long-term bonds, and cooperative behaviors. Managing these interactions requires not only communication, but also memory of past events, recognition of individuals, and anticipation of responses. Studies of sperm whales show that clans maintain traditions over decades, sustained by shared communication systems. One gentle metaphor may help capture this. Whale intelligence functions like an oceanic library, where each individual carries shelves of knowledge, of routes, calls, and social histories. These libraries are not static. They grow with each generation, passed along through learning. The 52 hertz whale may represent a unique volume within such a library, a book written in a slightly different script, but still carried across the same waters. Evidence for cultural transmission strengthens the case for advanced intelligence. In orcas, hunting techniques vary between groups, passed on as traditions rather than genetic traits. Some pods specialize in fish, others in marine mammals, and calves learn these preferences from their mothers. Similarly, humpback song changes spread across oceans as cultural waves. These examples show that whales can learn from one another, preserve traditions, and innovate. Such flexibility requires both intelligence and memory on scales beyond the individual. Whale brains also exhibit a high density of spindle neurons, cells associated in humans and great apes with social cognition, empathy, and rapid decision-making. Their presence in cetaceans suggests convergent evolution, different lineages developing similar solutions for managing complex social lives. This reinforces the idea that whales are not only intelligent in abstract terms, but specifically adapted for rich, long-term social interaction. The study of whale intelligence is not without challenges. Observations are often limited to surface behavior, and experiments must be non-invasive. Yet advances in acoustic monitoring, tagging, and long-term fieldwork continue to expand knowledge. By piecing together migration data, vocal analysis, and social interactions, scientists gain a clearer picture of cognition in the sea. Each finding adds weight to the conclusion that whales operate with minds shaped by both individual learning and collective culture. For the 52 hertz whale, intelligence and memory may explain persistence. Year after year, it followed consistent migratory paths, calling in the same frequency. This stability implies not randomness, but deliberate repetition, guided by internal memory. Whether or not other whales responded, the individual sustained its song across decades, showing resilience that mirrors the endurance of whale culture in general. It is worth pausing to notice how intelligence and memory shift the way we think about difference. The whale's unique call may not mark deficiency, but variation within a species capable of great flexibility. Just as human languages contain dialects, accents, and idiosyncrasies, whale communication allows room for individuality. Intelligence makes this possible, memory sustains it, and culture shapes it. The exploration of whale cognition continues to raise profound questions. What does it mean to recognize oneself in sound? How do whales experience social bonds across thousands of kilometers? How are memories of routes, calls, and companions stored in their vast brains? Each question connects biology with philosophy, showing that the study of whales touches on themes that extend beyond science. As we reflect on these findings, the story of the 52 hertz whale fits into a broader pattern. It is a reminder that intelligence expresses itself in diversity, not uniformity. Its call was unusual, but its persistence speaks of memory, and its survival speaks of adaptation. From here, the narrative widens further. If whales are intelligent and memory-rich, then the ocean itself becomes a kind of living archive, where sound is both history and connection. This perspective leads naturally to the idea of the sea as a memory system, storing voices across generations. When we think of memory, we often imagine it as something held within the brain of an individual. But in the ocean, memory exists in another form as well, in the persistence of sound. Every call, every echo, every vibration leaves traces in the acoustic environment. Some fade within seconds, others are captured in recordings, and together they form an archive of life beneath the surface. In this sense, the ocean itself functions as a kind of memory system, storing the rhythms of Earth in sound. The physics of water makes this possible. Because sound travels so efficiently underwater, low-frequency waves can move across entire basins without losing much energy. A blue whale's call, released in the North Pacific, can be detected thousands of kilometers away. Seismic events, such as underwater earthquakes or volcanic eruptions, generate signals that circle the globe. Even the crack of calving icebergs resonates for long distances. These phenomena mean that the ocean carries information far beyond the place of origin, extending the reach of memory across space and time. Scientists have taken advantage of this property by creating long-term acoustic archives. Hydrophones placed on the seabed record continuously, storing not only whale calls, but also the ambient sounds of the environment. These archives span decades, allowing comparisons across generations. By replaying older recordings, researchers can detect shifts in whale populations, changes in song patterns, and even alterations in the background noise caused by human activity. In effect, the ocean's voices are written into time, waiting to be read. One gentle metaphor may help here. The sea can be thought of as a library of echoes. Each event contributes a page, whether it is the call of a migrating whale, the grinding of ice, or the hum of a distant ship. Some pages are repeated often, building chapters of recurring patterns. Others appear only once, like rare entries. Together, they form a chronicle of both natural and human histories. The rhythms of this archive extend beyond biology. Seasonal cycles imprint themselves on the soundscape. In spring and summer, melting ice produces cascades of noise in polar regions. In autumn, storms increase in frequency, adding layers of turbulence. These seasonal rhythms provide cues for migration and breeding. Whales and other animals synchronize their behaviors with the recurring sounds of their environment. The archive, therefore, is not passive but active, guiding life by repeating reliable patterns. On longer scales, climate patterns also leave acoustic signatures. El Niño events, for example, alter wind and rainfall, changing the background sound of the ocean. Shifts in ice cover change the frequency and intensity of cracking and calving. Even ocean acidification, though subtle, may affect how sound propagates, altering the reach of calls over centuries. By studying these acoustic shifts, scientists gain insight into processes that are otherwise difficult to measure. For whales, this network of sound and memory forms the foundation of social and ecological life. A calf learns its mother's call against the backdrop of ocean noise. Adults navigate by recognizing the acoustic contours of regions they have visited before. Groups transmit culture by repeating songs year after year, adding layers to the archive. The 52 hertz whale fits into this system by contributing its own voice, different in frequency, but still a persistent thread woven into the larger tapestry. Acoustic memory also has a conservation role. By comparing modern recordings with older ones, scientists can track population recovery after whaling. Fin whale pulses that were rare in the 1970s have become more common in recent decades, reflecting growth in numbers. Blue whale calls reveal migration routes that remain stable even after generations. These comparisons show that the ocean's archive is not only history, but also evidence. Guiding policy to protect endangered species, the persistence of unusual signals, such as the 52 hertz call, demonstrates how anomalies can become part of the record. Year after year, hydrophones captured the same distinct line on spectrograms. Even without direct observation, the sound itself became a memory of the individual. Unlike a visual sighting, which is fleeting, the acoustic record endures. Researchers decades later can revisit the recordings, hearing the same calls and asking new questions. The whale's voice thus continues to live within the archive. Even if the animal itself is no longer present, it is worth pausing to notice how this perspective changes our understanding of the ocean. Instead of a silent expanse, it becomes a continuous recorder of activity. Natural events, biological calls, and human actions all contribute. Some signals overlap harmoniously, others interfere, but all are preserved for as long as instruments record them. This layered soundscape becomes a form of collective memory, not belonging to any single creature, but to the planet itself. Another example of sound as archive comes from geological monitoring. Underwater earthquakes produce acoustic waves called T-waves, which travel long distances. By listening to these signals, scientists can track seismic activity even in remote regions without seismographs. Similarly, the sounds of calving glaciers provide clues about climate change. These records show that sound carries information across disciplines, from biology to geology to climatology, linking processes into a shared rhythm. One soft metaphor frames this clearly. The ocean can be seen as the heartbeat of Earth, audible through its sounds. Each whale call, each crack of ice, each pulse of sonar adds to that beat. It is not a single rhythm, but a layered one, combining life, geology, and human presence. To listen is to perceive the continuity of these rhythms across time. For the 52 hertz whale, the ocean's archive ensured that its voice did not vanish. Scientists who first detected it preserved the recordings, passing them into institutional memory. Later generations of researchers revisited the data, confirming the persistence of the signal. In cultural terms, the whale became famous. In scientific terms, it became part of a permanent record. Its unusual pitch was not erased by the sea, but amplified by the technology that listens. This view of the ocean as a memory system broadens the significance of anomalies. A unique call is not only a mystery of biology, but also a contribution to the collective record of life. Each variation enriches the archive, reminding us that diversity is part of resilience. The sea holds all these voices, from the common to the rare, as evidence of the complexity of its inhabitants. From here, the narrative shifts back to the whale itself. The 52 hertz call, preserved across decades, is more than data. It is a reminder that mysteries can endure. Even with archives, technology, and analysis, some questions remain unanswered. This persistence of mystery highlights both the power and the limits of knowledge. The next step is to return to the individual, to consider how the whale's continued presence over decades deepened the enigma, keeping alive the sense of wonder that still surrounds it. One of the most striking aspects of the 52 hertz whale is that despite decades of acoustic records, no one has ever seen it. We know its presence only through sound. Hydrophones captured its calls across seasons, mapping migrations from Alaska to California, yet no ship or aircraft has reported a visual confirmation. This absence makes the whale an enduring mystery, a living creature studied for more than 30 years, but never directly observed. The ocean itself explains much of this. Whales spend the majority of their lives beneath the surface. Even the largest species surface for only minutes at a time, and the ocean's vastness makes encounters rare. A single whale moving along thousands of kilometers of coastline can easily avoid direct contact with human observers. Sightings depend on luck, timing, and proximity, whereas hydrophones record continuously, undisturbed by weather or distance. The imbalance between visual and acoustic evidence reflects the challenge of studying life in the deep. Researchers have tracked the 52 hertz whale since the early 1990s, using data from military arrays and later from civilian networks. Its migrations followed predictable patterns, often moving south in autumn and returning north in spring. The tracks suggested feeding grounds in the Aleutian Islands and breeding areas farther south. Yet even with this knowledge, efforts to intercept the whale visually failed. Ships deployed in likely regions saw other whales, blues, fins, humpbacks, but none could be matched with the unique voice. Part of the difficulty lies in distinguishing individuals at sea. Blue and fin whales are massive, but to the human eye, their surfacings often look similar. Without hearing the whale's call at the same moment, observers cannot know whether the animal they see is the same one producing the anomalous frequency. Matching sight to sound requires simultaneous detection, a rare event given the scale of the ocean. The lack of visual confirmation has fueled speculation. Some scientists propose that the whale may resemble a blue or fin whale, so closely that it has been seen but not recognized as unusual. Others suggest It may be a hybrid with no obvious outward difference. Without unique markings or confirmed photographs, the whale remains invisible, defined only by the consistency of its acoustic signature. This invisibility is not unique to the 52 Hz whale. Many marine species are known primarily through sound. Beaked whales, for example, are elusive deep divers often detected only by their clicks. Some populations have been identified acoustically before ever being described visually. The case of the 52 Hz whale is therefore unusual in fame, but not in method. It illustrates how sound often precedes sight in ocean science, not the persistence of the whale across decades. Also adds to the mystery. Calls were recorded almost every year from the early 1990s through the mid-2000s. This longevity suggests that the whale lived at least 20 years, possibly more, since baleen whales can survive for many decades. If it was an individual anomaly, it shows remarkable resilience. Its survival implies that despite its unusual call, it was able to feed, migrate, and navigate successfully. One gentle metaphor may help here. The whale is like a signature written on water, invisible to the eye, but legible through sound. Year after year, the same line appeared on spectrograms, marking its continued existence. Scientists learned to recognize it immediately. As one might recognize handwriting, even without seeing the writer, the absence of a sighting does not mean the whale was entirely alone. Hydrophones detected its calls in regions where other whales were present. Its routes overlapped with known migrations. It likely swam near others, even if its voice stood apart. Yet for researchers, the lack of visual confirmation left questions unanswered. Its size, its body shape, its health, and even its precise species remain uncertain. Attempts to locate the whale intensified in the early 2000s, when its cultural fame grew. Expeditions were launched with hydrophones to triangulate its position. Yet the ocean proved too vast, and the whale's surfacings too brief. Each effort returned with valuable acoustic data, but no definitive image. In a sense, the whale resisted categorization, remaining an acoustic presence rather than a visual specimen. The endurance of the mystery also reflects limits of technology. While hydrophones provide broad coverage, they cannot give detailed images. Satellite tracking, tagging, and aerial surveys are effective for whales in general, but without identifying the individual visually first, no tag can be applied. The 52 Hz whale thus remained beyond the reach of these tools. Known but untouchable. This gap between hearing and seeing has symbolic weight. Science is often associated with visual confirmation, photographs, measurements, physical specimens. Here, the most famous whale is defined by absence of sight. It exists entirely in the auditory domain, a reminder that knowledge can take many forms. Sound, not sight, is the medium of truth in this case. It is worth pausing to consider how unusual this is. An animal known worldwide, not because it was filmed or captured, but because it was heard. In an era of visual media, its fame rests on data invisible to the eye. This inversion challenges assumptions about what it means to know a species. The whale shows that hearing can reveal life just as powerfully as seeing. For marine science, the enduring mystery has both limitations and advantages. The lack of sight means that some biological questions remain unanswered. The whale species, sex, and appearance are speculative. Yet the acoustic record provides long-term continuity unmatched by most visual studies. Decades of calls offer insights into persistence, migration, and stability. In this way, the absence of one kind of evidence is balanced by the richness of another. The cultural narrative of the unseen whale further amplifies its mystique. People are drawn to what remains hidden, and the fact that the whale has never been photographed deepens its symbolic role. It stands as both a scientific puzzle and a cultural metaphor, bridging the gap between data and imagination. From the perspective of ecology, however, the mystery underscores practical challenges. Many species live at depths or in regions beyond regular observation. Protecting them requires indirect evidence, such as acoustic monitoring. The 52 hertz whale highlights how conservation can proceed even without complete certainty. Knowing that a voice persists is enough to justify care for the soundscape in which it lives. The endurance of this mystery, therefore, is not simply a gap in knowledge, but a feature of the story. It reminds us that oceans are still places of hidden lives. Even in the age of satellites and global networks, some creatures move beyond sight, known only by the traces they leave. The 52 hertz whale continues to be one of the most vivid reminders of this truth. From here, the story turns toward closure. After decades of calls, the whale's voice became a symbol not only of mystery, but also of resilience. As we reflect on what it means for science and culture, we can move toward a conclusion, a summing up of what the 52 hertz whale has taught us about sound, survival, and the human search for meaning in the sea. The story of the 52 hertz whale has carried us across science, culture, and ecology. From the physics of sound in water to the technologies that detect it. From the challenges of migration to the influences of human noise. And from cultural symbolism to scientific puzzles. The whale's unusual voice has connected many fields of knowledge. It is more than a single case. It is a lens through which we can see how life and environment, fact and imagination, blend in the study of the ocean's dot at its core. The 52 hertz whale is evidence of variation. Whales communicate across a range of frequencies, shaped by anatomy, culture, and ecology. Most remain within familiar bands, but this individual produced a voice apart from the rest. The difference was stable across decades, recorded year after year. It did not prevent survival, migration, or persistence. In this way, the whale demonstrates that life can succeed even in unusual forms. Science explains much of this through acoustics and physiology. Low-frequency calls travel far. High-frequency calls carry detail. Baleen whales evolved to use the deep range, dolphins the higher range. The 52 hertz whale sits between, unusual but not impossible. Hydrophones revealed its roots and persistence, proving that even anomalies can be studied. This reinforces a simple truth. Diversity is part of biology, and outliers are not failures, but variations. Yet science does not remove all mystery. No one has seen the whale. Its body, its species, even its sex remain unknown. It exists for us as a sound, a line on a spectrogram, a presence inferred but never confirmed visually. This absence invites questions that may never be answered. In that sense, the whale reminds us of the limits of knowledge. Oceans still hold lives that escape full understanding. The cultural impact of the whale shows how humans respond to such mysteries. The phrase, "the loneliest whale," spread quickly, simplifying complex biology into a symbol of isolation. Songs, films, and artworks adopted the whale as metaphor. While not scientifically precise, this cultural life expanded awareness. It brought attention to the importance of sound in the sea and to the challenges whales face from human noise. The blend of science and culture created a bridge between researchers and the public. Ecology grounds the story in reality. Whales depend on sound to migrate, reproduce, and survive. Noise from ships, sonar, and industry interferes with this communication. Populations adapt, raising their voices or shifting their roots, but not without cost. The 52 hertz wail persisted within this changing environment, its unusual pitch perhaps helping it avoid some overlap with noise. Still, its resilience does not erase the broader concern. The ocean soundscape is under pressure, and protecting it is essential. Looking across these perspectives, the wail becomes a case study in how anomalies illuminate larger truths. By focusing on one unusual voice, we have learned about the physics of sound, the complexity of whale communication, the importance of culture in animals, and the impact of human activity. The whale is not an isolated curiosity, but a thread connecting disciplines. One gentle metaphor may capture this. The whale is like a single tone that resonates within a symphony. It does not match the others exactly, but its persistence enriches the whole. By listening to it, we notice not only the note itself, but the larger composition of the sea. There is also value in the mystery that remains. Science often seeks closure, but sometimes it is the unanswered questions that sustain curiosity. The 52 hertz wail continues to remind us that not all puzzles are resolved, and that is part of the wonder of nature. The persistence of mystery keeps exploration alive, encouraging new generations to listen, to record, and to ask. For conservation, the whale's story highlights the need to preserve acoustic habitats. Protecting migration corridors, reducing noise, and maintaining quiet seas are not abstract goals, but practical requirements for survival. Every whale call, whether common or unusual, depends on the ability to travel through water without interference. Ensuring that space is a responsibility shared across nations. In reflection, the whale's enduring presence shows how a single anomaly can become a symbol. It has inspired both science and art, conservation and imagination. It is a reminder that difference is not weakness, that persistence is a form of success, and that the ocean still holds voices we do not fully understand. It is worth noticing. As we close, how the story has moved, from detection to explanation, from ecology to culture, from sound to symbol. Each layer adds depth, but the center remains the same. A whale calling at 52 hertz, steady across decades. That voice continues to echo in both archives and human thought. The conclusion is not an end, but an opening. Just as the whale's song carried beyond what was expected, so the story carries beyond biology. It teaches about resilience, about the fragility of soundscapes, and about the capacity of humans to find meaning in the unfamiliar. The enduring mystery of the 52 hertz wail lies not only in the unanswered questions, but in the reminder that the sea is vast, alive, and still full of surprises. Thank you for sharing this calm journey with the sleepy BrainDose. May the story of the 52 hertz wail leave you with both peace and gentle curiosity. If you'd like more quiet science for sleep, feel free to subscribe, like, or share your thoughts. We invite you to join us again soon for another soft voyage into knowledge.